Welcome to our CFP exam preparation discussion about market indices, specifically focusing on the key differences between the Dow Jones Industrial Average and the S&P 500. Understanding these differences is crucial for the exam and your future practice. Let's dive into the Dow Jones Industrial Average first. The DJIA is a price-weighted index, which means companies with higher stock prices have a greater impact on the index movement. Think of it like this. If you have a $400 stock and a $40 stock in the index, a $1 change in the $400 stock will have 10 times more impact than a $1 change in the $40 stock. This can create some interesting situations in the market. Many candidates make the mistake of assuming that larger companies have more influence on the Dow. This isn't necessarily true. A smaller company with a higher stock price could actually have more influence than a larger company with a lower stock price. For example, United Health Group's stock price around $500 has more impact on the Dow than Apple's stock price around $170, even though Apple has a much larger market capitalization. Now, let's contrast this with the S&P 500, which uses a market value weighting system. In this case, companies are weighted based on their total market capitalization, which is the stock price multiplied by the number of outstanding shares. This means larger companies have proportionally larger impacts on the index movement. Apple, Microsoft, and other tech giants have significant influence on the S&P 500 because of their massive market capitalizations. Here's a practical example that often appears on the exam. If Company A has 1 million shares at $50 each, and Company B has 10 million shares at $5 each, both companies have the same market capitalization of $50 million. In the S&P 500, they would have equal weights. However, if both were in the Dow, Company A would have 10 times more influence because of its higher share price. A common exam trap involves calculations related to index changes. Remember that for the Dow, you only need the stock prices and their changes. For the S&P 500, you must consider both price and number of shares outstanding. Students often mix up these calculation methods, leading to incorrect answers. Another critical point for the exam is understanding how corporate actions affect these indices. Stock splits affect the Dow differently than the S&P 500. In the Dow, a 2-for-1 stock split reduces a company's influence by half, while in the S&P 500, the company's weight remains the same because the total market value doesn't change. The exam might also test your understanding of why these different weighting methods matter. The S&P 500's market value weighting is generally considered more representative of the overall market because it reflects the actual size of companies. The Dow's price weighting method is simpler, but can give disproportionate weight to higher price stocks regardless of the company's size. When studying for this topic, focus on understanding the mathematical principles behind each weighting method and their practical implications. Don't just memorize the definitions. Practice calculating index changes using both methods and be prepared to explain why a particular stock movement might affect one index more than the other. Remember, questions about market indices often appear in both the portfolio management and investment planning sections of the CFP exam. Understanding these concepts thoroughly will help you tackle these questions with confidence.